Hi, everyone. My name is Andrea Wilson Woods, and every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I do LinkedIn Live. And I like to talk about healthcare, business, startups, and writing because I'm a published author. And I've had so many people ask me about publishing your book, especially if you're doing it on your own or independently with a small press. So for this LinkedIn Live, I'm going to do 10 do's and don'ts when publishing your book. So 10 do's and don'ts. And I'm actually going to start with 4 basic writing tips that I usually tell people when they ask, and I will put that in here. Let's see. All right. So 4 basic writing tips. Number 1, read, read, read. I do not understand writers who don't read, and you really need to read in the genre you are most comfortable. So I write in narrative nonfiction, specifically memoir. So most of the time, I am reading nonfiction. Occasionally, I will read a novel, but you really need to read in that specific genre. And what do you figure out what do you like? What did that writer do well? What didn't they do well? It really helps you discover your voice. You're not copying other writers, you're just trying to get a sense for the genre. Number 2, write a great story. I mean, I know this seems obvious, but a great story will trump bad writing every day of the week. A great story. Let me give you a few examples. 50 Shades of Grey. I don't even know how many millions of dollars that book and that whole company has made for E.L. James, I believe is her name. But if you actually read the book, and I read the first one, only the first one, because I wanted to understand what the fuss was about. It's a very interesting story, and it was at a perfect time. It even started as fan fiction, but it's not written well. And every writer I know who's read the book just gets so frustrated because there were grammatical errors. There were just things that didn't make sense. The main character is a young American woman living in Seattle, but throughout the book, there are all these references that no American would typically say. So it was super frustrating. So that's an example, though, of a great story, kind of poor writing, very successful. I'll give you one more example that is more recent in nonfiction, memoir specifically. And please put any questions in the chat. So I have someone helping me out and put all those questions in the chat. So one more example, Rachel Hollis, Girl, Wash Your Face. That was Rachel's first memoir. It came out, I think, 2.5 years ago. And again, I wanted to see what the fuss was all about. So I read the book. Actually, I think I listened to the audiobook. And she tells really good stories. They're interesting. But she's not the best writer in the world, not by a long shot. And she knows that. She admits it. But, she knows how to tell a story. And she has gone on to sell millions of copies, not only of that book, but subsequent books she's published. And she has a very strong following. So just remember that a great story will trump bad writing. That's very important. Number 3 writing tip, and then I promise we're going to get to the big topic here. Edit, edit, edit. And do not think, even if you edit for a living, which I used to, that you can edit your own material and get it right. And there are a couple levels of editing. There's content editing where you're going in and you're actually moving content around, taking things out, shifting things, really sort of, I was going to come up with a baking analogy, but I don't cook, so that's not going to work. But you're really just getting things in the right position. At that point, when you're doing content editing, you're not worried about grammar, punctuation, or spelling. After that, typically you would do what's called line editing and then copy editing. Line editing is actually going through the book line by line. You assume now the content is where it's supposed to be, but now you're going through it line by line and seeing what's working, what's not. Copy editing goes even deeper. Then you begin looking for mistakes, also consistency in style, how the book is laid out. And then the very last step is proofreading. And I can't tell you how many writers and published authors I know who don't hire anyone to edit their books. And you can't cheap out on this. You're going to have to pay. It is so important. Even after my book was published, which I'll talk about in a moment, there were mistakes that my early readers found. And so we corrected them when we updated the book. We made sure those mistakes were fixed. And I can't tell you how many drafts of editing my book went through. I want to say 20 at least. And we still missed a couple of things. So you have to invest in editing. And then tip number 4 is what we're talking about today: sell, sell, sell. No one knows your book or the subject matter better than you do. And it is your job as an author, if you want to be successful, if you actually want to sell books, you got to hustle. You got to sell. You have to market. That is your job. Even if, let's say, you're signed with a mainstream publisher and they might put a certain amount of marketing dollars towards your book, it's still your job to sell it. It's still your job to go on the in-person or virtual book tours. It's still your job to talk about your book to anyone who would listen. And I think too many people think, okay, I have a great story. I know my writing is strong. The book is edited. It's laid out perfectly. I'm going to throw it on Amazon and it's going to sell. Doesn't work that way. Absolutely does not. So I'm going to take a peek in the comments. Hello, Wisconsin. Is it cold in Wisconsin this time of year? I'm not so sure. But yes, please, in the chat, whether you're watching on LinkedIn or Facebook, there's about a 5-second delay, but please put in the chat, where you're from, and you can start asking me questions now. I don't necessarily wait till the end. For some, I will, but please, any questions you have in the chat. So those are my 4 tips: read, 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 write a great story, edit, and sell. And to tell you about my book, and my cat is like cat bombing the live. She says hello. So my book, Better Off Bald: A Life in 147 Days, is a medical memoir, and it's based on raising my sister in my 20s. I raised her for 7 years. I was her legal guardian, and the book is really framed around her 147-day battle with liver cancer, which she lost. And that is my book. It's my only published book. I've done a lot of other things and contributed to articles and even academic stuff, but that's my only published book. So what I'm telling you today is what I learned in the process of publishing that book. And it was published in October of 2019, so over a year and a half ago. So if you're ready to get started, let me know. Let me know in the chat. Again, I have people monitoring the chat. I hope this is going live on Facebook. So can my moderator let me know if they can see it on Facebook? And hopefully it's going live on LinkedIn. I'm going to just take a little peek, make sure that it's going out live. It definitely is on LinkedIn, so that's good. Let me know in the chat if you can see me on Facebook as well. It's supposed to go to both, but you kind of never know sometimes. All right, so let's get into, you're live on both. Okay, great, thank you. Let's get into the do's and don'ts. And the title is 4 do's and don'ts, but I ended up with like 10 do's and 5 don'ts or something, but we're going to go through all of them. So do number 1, tip number 1, hire a team. Hire a team. If you are not going with a mainstream publisher, if you are doing this on your own or a small independent press, hire a team. You can't do everything, even if you're really good at marketing, you can't do it all. And for me, I didn't want to do all the final copy editing and proofreading because I knew I would miss things. I'm too close to the book at that point. Also, I didn't want to figure out, like, how do I upload it to Amazon and how do I create all those accounts? And I didn't want to deal with most of that stuff. So I hired a team to help me get the book out there and distributed it. And I use Scribe Media. And if you decide to go with them, please tell them I referred you. I have a referral link, but I didn't bring it for this live chat, so no worries. But I really like Scribe. They even help people write their books if you're not a strong writer. But I came to them with a finished manuscript that at that point had been through about 5 edits, both had been through content editing and line editing. And so by the time I came to them, I had a really strong manuscript. It still needed copy editing and proofreading. It needed to be laid out appropriately and, and have a cover and all those things that are part of publishing a book. And another reason I hired a team is because I knew I wouldn't be able to design the book cover. Even if I had the tools, I needed people with a different point of view and an eye. So if you look at my book, you'll see the photo credit is me because I took the photo that's on the cover of my book. It's a photo of my sister, but the actual design, the designer at Scribe Media did the design of the book. And that wasn't the first, version they gave me. We went through it together. It was a very collaborative process, but you have to, again, hire a team. And too often people have great books, maybe they're even investing in marketing, but they did the cover themselves and they're not experts. And think about when you're browsing on your phone on Amazon, think about how small that cover is, maybe the size of your thumbnail. And that's why a cover has to grab people immediately. So hire a team. Oh, hey, Susan. Oh, fantastic. So good to see you. I know Susan, she's awesome. All right, so hire a team. Let's go on to tip number 2. Create an author and/or book website. You want to be able to not only drive traffic, but you want to be able to send people to one place where they can contact you, get all your social media, and most importantly, buy your book. I already had a website, and for me, with my previous coaching business and other things I do, I decided for my first book to have a book website. It was very inexpensive. I actually did all of it myself in Squarespace. And so on my book website, betteroffball.com, not only is the media kit there and the press kit and articles I've written and podcast interviews, but also testimonials are there about my book. The awards my book has won are on the book website. And if anyone wants to buy the book directly from me, they can and often do. And so I have that, available as well. And so really, you really need an author website or a book website. If you're already set up on your website and you just need to tweak it and you can get all those components for your book, great. Don't get a different website. But for me, I felt like I needed one. So if you want to see what my website looks like, go to betteroffball.com. And then I also recommend, and this is what I did, look at authors you really like that are writing in the same genre you are and look at their websites. And again, really analyze them and think about what do you like, what do you don't like, what do you want it to, look like. Hey, Kathy. Thank you. Yeah, sell, 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 right? But nobody wants to hear that, but it's true. All right, tip number 3. Gather endorsements before publishing and recruit your review crew. Let's do the first one first. Gather endorsements before publishing. I actually got this idea from another author, so big shout out to Tom Halsey. So anyway, before my book was published, but it had been through most of the final edits, I decided after seeing how Tom did it, I was like, I need some endorsements. And it was very important to me because my book is a medical memoir to get endorsements by the medical community and specifically oncologists or any doctors involved in the treatment of cancer. And so I reached out to them and I let them know that this wasn't the final version of the book, but pretty close. And I asked for endorsements. And I probably asked, I don't know, a dozen people. And a little over half gave me endorsements. So those endorsements are in what's called the front matter of my book, whether you buy the Kindle or paperback. So getting those early endorsements carries a lot of weight. It also helps later on when you're selling your book and it's just out. And so really get endorsements again in your genre. You want to look for people where that endorsement would actually, make sense for your book, and in my case, give it legitimacy, because my book really goes into a deep dive about a cancer journey, including medications and etc. Now, within tip number 3, recruit your review crew. The idea behind this is you want to find a group of people who will read your book before it's published, and the minute it goes live on Amazon, will leave a review. You really have to do this months before, because it's going to take you a little while, and you'll be surprised by who will, say they're going to do it and who won't. I ended up recruiting about 35 people on my review crew, and all of them got a copy of the paperback before it was officially published. So I believe I sent out the paperbacks in mid-August, as soon as I had them. Now, my book wasn't published officially till October, and that gave those people about 6 to 8 weeks before the pre-sale started on Amazon, which was actually the last week in September. And here's the thing about that. I was surprised by the people who read my book and left a review, and I was surprised by the people I knew really well, who said they would read my book and leave a review and never did. And that's just life. That's what's going to happen. So make sure, however many early reviews you want, you recruit twice as many people, and really emphasize to them, hey, this review needs to go live with first day, ideally, maybe the first week. And so you really need to stress that for these people, that there is a deadline they have on reading your book. My book was actually on the longer side, about 375 pages. So a lot of people didn't finish reading it, but I did have a few people who, one person said she was horrified by my experience, which was upsetting. I still convinced her to leave a review. But also, when you're doing this, your review crew, give them the steps to leave a review, give them email reminders, give them direct links. Since you are sending these books out free, they do need to put in their book that they received the book free for an honest review. And they should disclose any relationship they have to you, especially if they're directly related by family. They should disclose that in their review as well, because you want to stay compliant with Amazon's policies. All right, I'm going to take a quick water break and ask if there are any questions about endorsements or reviews. And those are two different things. Oh, goodness. I'm getting hoarse. We're only on tip number 3. All right. All right, moving on. If you have questions about endorsements and reviews, though, put them in the chat. Tip number 4. Accept any and all opportunities to promote your book. All of them. I mean, once you start getting momentum, more opportunities will come your way. So take advantage of them. I'm talking about articles, op-eds, podcast interviews, any way that you can get your book out there that's going to be either free or somewhat inexpensive. And we will talk about in the next tip about actually investing marketing dollars. But really take advantage of any opportunities. So during that phase, before the book was live, when I was getting endorsements and recruiting my review crew, I was also looking at opportunities to do podcasts and op-eds and articles, and reaching out to everyone I knew and asking for these, opportunities. And most of them came through, especially the ones that I got on my own. All of them came through. And what else do I want to say about this? Just don't be shy. You cannot be shy about your book. You can't. You have to be willing to put it out there. One opportunity I had really early on was shout out to the Coffee House writers, who I know some of them are watching live. They gave me the opportunity to, this was prior to COVID, to do sort of a casual, book signing and Q&A. And it was in Los Angeles, and I was going to be visiting Los Angeles. And the date was not ideal, but it's what worked for them. I made it work for me because it was an opportunity to get in front of other writers. And also I sold books too. So don't be afraid to sell books to just anyone. If someone's going to pay you for your book, have it ready to go, especially if it's paperback. So look for opportunities, articles, op-eds, podcast interviews. Now, there is a caveat here. My experience is in nonfiction, not fiction. And with nonfiction, you as an author should have some sort of platform that kind of goes back to your website. What is your topic? What are your talking points? What can you discuss? And I've discussed everything from my sister's journey as a cancer patient, my journey as a caregiver, dying with dignity, dealing with medical professionals. I mean, I've talked about all of it, just talking about the writing process itself. And with novels, it might be a little harder to do articles and op-eds. There's no reason you can't do podcast interviews, though. You should do those. But it might be harder to find the right subject matter, but it can still be done. And this is where hiring a team can highlight and find those opportunities for you, especially with fiction, because it's just not as straightforward as nonfiction. All right, let's move on to tip number 5, invest in promotion. You have to invest dollars into promoting your book. You have to do it. How much you invest and where you invest it is entirely up to you. Now, I did a couple of things in this area. Initially, I hired Scribe Media. They, like I said, they write books, they edit books, they put the whole book together for you. And what I hired them to do was to put my book together, do all the final editing, get it ready, list it on Amazon, all of that. I also bought a separate marketing package from them. Looking back, if you can learn anything from my mistake, I wish I hadn't done that. Not because they didn't do a good job, they did a decent job, but everything they did for me, I could have done myself. Everything, all of it. And I like marketing. So if you don't like marketing, definitely, again, hire a team. And if it can be Scribe Media, they can do it all for you. And no, I'm not being paid to say their name over and over. There are a lot of other companies as well. I like marketing and I hustle. And so I, I had no problem getting things out there, but I did invest. And I'm going to talk about sort of 3 places where I invested. Oh, hey, Tina, endorsement testimonial. Okay, let me come right back to that. Don't let me forget. So here are a couple promotions that are recommended. I'm going to go with the probably least known first. NetGalley. Look them up, NetGalley. NetGalley has all kinds of promotions specific to your genre, to an audience. I mean, there's so many choices with NetGalley, and I've always been extremely happy with the results because anyone who signs up for a free copy of your book through NetGalley, you get their information and you can go back to those people, and I have, and ask them to leave reviews because they already got a free copy of your book through NetGalley. So look at all the packages they have, decide if you want to do something specific to the genre or maybe the audience. But they do a really, really good job and they have lots of options available. And I use them for 2 or 3 different aspects of marketing. Another big one that authors don't take advantage of enough, in my opinion, and by the way, this is where my team steered me in the right direction. Goodreads giveaways. Oh my gosh, not a huge investment. There are 2 tiers for the Goodreads giveaway platform. The first tier I think is about $120. And that's for the whole giveaway, but they don't feature the giveaway on their website. So you're not getting in front of their audience like other people would. The other one is called a featured giveaway, and I think it's a little over $500. That one's very different because they're actually pushing your giveaway out to their audience. If you're going to do a giveaway, you have to make a couple of decisions. How many copies of your book are you going to give away? Are you going to give away paperback or electronic? If you choose an ebook, Goodreads does that for you. You don't even have to think about it. They choose the winners, they send your book out, it's done. If you choose paperback, which is what I'm doing right now with the Goodreads giveaway, it's the author's responsibility to ship the books to people. So I have done, this is my 4th giveaway on Goodreads. I do space them apart. And this is the 2nd time I'm giving away 10 paperbacks. And it's the first time I've actually done a featured giveaway. And it's amazing because I think over 2,500 people have signed up for the giveaway, and it goes all the way until August 1st. And the other thing about this that really works well is every person who signs up for your giveaway, even if they don't win the book, they are your book is automatically in their Goodreads feed or profile as a book you want to read. So just by signing up for a giveaway, the book shows up on their end as a book they want to read. So even if they don't win your book, they're not necessarily going to forget. So highly recommend Goodreads giveaways. I love doing them. I'm doing one right now. They're fantastic. And the last one that's really, really big, and then I'm going to answer Tina's question, is BookBub. Now, Scribe really has a great relationship with BookBub, and they really tried so hard to get my book featured on BookBub. If you can get your book featured there, and they recommend that you approach them after the book is published, but not too far after the book is published. If it goes out to millions of people, I mean, it's phenomenal. But BookBub did not want to do my book. They're very choosy, and apparently memoirs don't do as well on their platform as fiction. So for my fiction writers out there, for you novelists, you have to check out BookBub, and you should sign up for your own account, become a BookBub. Oh my God, I'm saying bug now. BookBub author. But that's a great one that I couldn't take advantage of, but perhaps you can. All right, I'm going to wait for some more questions, and I'm going to answer Tina's question. And I hope you guys are finding this helpful. So Tina has a question, what is the difference between an endorsement and a review? An endorsement is typically from someone who is well respected, well known, or in my case, because it was a medical memoir, I wanted endorsements from doctors, specifically oncologists or doctors working in cancer. So that's what an endorsement is. It is a type of review, but it's very, very narrow. You are trying to find endorsements from people who might actually convince others to buy your book. So, and you want to get endorsements ahead of time because you actually want to put those endorsements in the front matter of your book. So I started asking for endorsements, I think 4 months before my book was published. You have to do it far enough out that it can actually make it into your book. Reviews, on the other hand, are anyone. Anyone can write a review of your book, and they can write it on Amazon. They can write it on their own website. They can write it on Goodreads. That's what a review is. There are services that you can pay for reviews, and there is one in particular for independent publishers called Forward Review, F-O-R-E, Forward Review. And some people are very anti-buying reviews. You're not ever buying a good review. That's not how it works. So let's say Forward, for example, Forward Review. I knew that they typically only reviewed independently published books. So I paid them to review my book. I paid them for a fair and honest review. And guess what? They were not a big fan of my book, but that's okay. So, when you pay for reviews, be very selective and make sure that that review carries some cachet. So, again, it will mean something to have your book reviewed by Kirkus as a great example. Kirkus typically only reviews mainstream books from mainstream publishers, but my team was able to connect with Kirkus, and it was a so-so review. Again, they didn't really like my book either, and that's okay. But reviews sell books, and that's why you want to get that review crew early on. Also, in the very back of my book, after my bio, just below my bio, I tell people where they can follow me on social media, and I say, please give me a review of my book. So I ask for it even in the book in writing, it's there. So I hope that answers your question, Tina. If it does not, let me know in the chat. We are going to go on. What else can I say about investing in promotion? I can talk about this all day, but I won't. So just remember NetGalley, Goodreads, and BookBub. And let's go on to the next one. Find your people. And there's a couple different things I mean by this. First of all, when you're in the early stages of your book, before you do any editing, you're in that first draft, super messy. I think it's Anne Lamott who says first drafts are shitty. You know, when you're in that place, make sure you get qualified readers to read your first draft. So the first draft in my book was finished in 2008, and I had 6 people read my book. 2 of them were mentors, women, over the age of 50, published writers themselves, published authors, and also my mentors in grad school. One person was a friend of mine who just begged me, and he was a writer as well, and he just begged me, and I finally gave in and said, okay, fine. Another person was a friend of my husband's at the time who read books for a living and gave professional reviews. And so she agreed to read my book. My ex-husband, who is a screenwriter, read my book. And then the final person was someone who was sort of a friend of a friend. I knew she was a big reader, but she was my target audience. She was over the age of 40. She had a child. Parenting was very important to her. She had even a little bit of a medical background. So I really wanted her to read my book. That's what I mean by finding your people. So find your people who are going to read the first draft of your book. And because you're going to get a lot of feedback, and that will help you go on to the next stages where you really start doing that content editing. Other ways to find your people: join Facebook groups in your genre. Again, shout out to the Coffee House Writers and to I think it's the National Memoir Association Facebook Club. But there are lots of groups / clubs on Facebook you can join. And now Clubhouse is very popular. So I'm sure there are many opportunities to talk about your book on Clubhouse. So you should look that up. And also just, online, connect with people, and in real life events and real person events we're coming back to. I went to my local independent bookstores. Again, this was a few months before COVID. I asked for opportunities to do a book signing. I mean, I just, if there was an opportunity, I took it. I just did it. So find your people, and really know your target audience too. Who is most likely to read your book? I think it was Andy Weir, Weir, correct me if I'm wrong, who wrote The Martian. And it started out and it's a novel, but it started out on his website. And he ended up getting this huge following of science fiction fans. And he initially could not get his book published, but once he had this huge following of his people, right, his target audience, he ended up getting his book published, the movie, and now he's got more books that have been come out. I think one's recent. Anyway, my point is he knew his audience. He knew they were out there. And so he just worked on them initially. So really just know your target audience, connect with them in any way, shape, or form. And please throw any questions you have in the chat. Moving right along. Tip number 7, reach out to libraries. If your book is a good candidate for a library book, and probably only a librarian could judge, reach out to libraries. I went in person to my local library, and I actually had a book signing, but COVID happened. But it didn't matter because after she read my book, she immediately put it into the county library system. I reached out to librarians that I knew in different parts of the country. I did a librarian promotion through NetGalley, so see how that all ties back together. And also I reached out to the Mayo Clinic because they have a patient library, and I've been there in person for events. And when I saw some of the books that were in their patient library, I knew my book would be a good fit. So I reached out to them directly. So really reach out to libraries. There's one caveat to this, whether you're fiction or nonfiction. You do need to have the right information for librarians in the front matter of your book. I forget what that block of text is called, but if remind me, I will follow up, with you if you're interested. But it's very important to let librarians know where to catalog your book. It's so important, especially with nonfiction, because your book is going to fall into probably more than one category. So when my book was initially published, it didn't have that block chunk of information, but when we updated the book, now it does, because you want to make it as easy as possible on the librarian to put your book in the right location so the right people find it. Again, I can't remember what that block of text is called. All right, any questions about librarians and any other comments? Okay, all right, moving on. Tip number 8, advertise on Amazon. However, if you're not an expert on advertising on Amazon, you need to hire someone. Now, initially, my team at Scribe, as part of the marketing package, did Amazon ads. I still had to pay for the ads themselves, but they put the ads together and did all the keyword and did everything you have to do when you're doing ads. The ads, the way they did them, were not successful. In fact, they were kind of a big fail. They really were terrible. However, I only worked with them for a very specific period of time. And so afterwards, I looked for experts and recommendations for people who really know Amazon ads inside out. And I found this amazing guy at Resurrecting Books. I don't know if he has a website. He's not even on LinkedIn, or otherwise I would have tagged him. But again, if you're interested, you can always shoot me an email. I'll put that at the end as well, and I can refer you to him. But he is phenomenal. He tests ads constantly. And so it has been very worthwhile for me to continue to invest in Amazon advertising. Occasionally I will take a break, but I almost always break even or have a profit on the advertising. And it just also keeps my book front of mind. I'm still in the top 100 for oncology, chemotherapy, and all these other sort of micro categories, if you will. But it's because I'm pushing my book out there, I'm advertising it, people are buying it, leaving reviews, and it has this sort of snowball effect. So, highly recommend. Another caveat here. There's a wonderful woman I know who published her book, and Amazon did not allow her to advertise on their platform, which you would think they would take any opportunity to make money, but I guess that's not true. And the reason was she had the word pissed off in the title of her book. Had that not been in the title of her book, she would have been fine, according to Amazon. That's what they said. But because that was in the title, they didn't think her book was appropriate for Amazon advertising. So that's something to think about. Now, I know there was a question about curse words. If curse words were not allowed in books that Amazon was going to advertise, probably 50% of the books would not be there. So cursing is fine. Again, I don't recommend it in the title of your book because you probably won't be able to advertise, but in the book itself is fine. You just might want to have a warning for the reader. And I know one of the most successful independent book campaigns of all time is David Goggins, Goggins, I think. Forget the name of his book, but he has a great story. But some of the negative reviews he's received have been about the amount of cursing that's in his book. Again, that's his choice, but it still allowed him to advertise on Amazon. So for people who are worried about cursing. All right. Oh, Susan, I'm so glad it's helpful. Tip number 9, and oh my gosh, I wish someone had told me this, okay? Let's see. I want to make sure. Oh, yes. Okay. Tip number 9. Do not ship first class or UPS ground. Now, I have a UPS store. That's where my mail goes. I love them. They know me. And initially, I was shipping my books ground, and it was about $11 consistently every time. That adds up really quickly when you start shipping a lot of books. And this is in the early phase when you're shipping to your review crew, when you're shipping to people who are going to give you endorsements and they want paperbacks. Unless it's an emergency and someone needs your book right away, ship your book at what's called book rate. It's much cheaper. My book, even as thick as it is at over 375 pages, at book rate is a little over $5. Now it takes longer to get there, but it saves me a lot of money. So how I wish someone had told me this. Um, oh my gosh, I would have saved hundreds and hundreds of dollars. But here's another little note about shipping. It's not often worth shipping to other countries. So, yes, okay, not worth shipping to other countries. I had someone who wanted to buy my book. She lives in Canada and she was going to buy it directly from me. The shipping cost, the book buying it directly from me as a paperback is $14.99. And then I put in about $6 to $7 to cover shipping. But to ship it to where she lived in Canada, it was going to cost $40 for shipping. And I said, just buy it from Amazon. Buy it from Amazon. It's okay. Obviously, I get more money when people buy the book directly from me in terms of profit, but it wasn't worth it for her to cover the shipping or for me to cover that shipping. So, again, just be aware when shipping to other countries how expensive that can get. Another thing I did here, a little tip that I have seen very few people do, was I had custom boxes made for my book. And that really got people's attention. So if you want more information about that, let me know. I can't think of the website offhand, but I did invest in these custom boxes for my book where the cover of my book was actually on the box. And people just loved the boxes. It was so funny. So another one. And tip number 10, before we get into the things you should not do, tip number 10, enter contest. There are so many directories for contests. And again, you have to look for contests that are right for your book, where you fit the qualifications. Um, Obviously, I was only focusing on contests where it was nonfiction, ideally memoir, or they had healthcare category. So enter contest. And a lot of directories will tell you whether a contest is reputable or not. And a general rule of thumb is the higher the fee you have to pay to be in the contest, the least respected the contest is. It's not unheard of to pay a small fee, let's say under 100 or really under like $90. That's not unheard of because you are paying them to process your book. They have to have readers, multiple readers read your book. So that's kind of typical. But when you get into the hundreds of dollars just for a book contest, I wouldn't do it. It's not worth it. All right. And I do hear any comments, please put them in the chat. So I do have a moderator who's helping me with these comments. All right, let's get to the things you should not do. And there's not 10 of them. So we have the 10 tips. Now we're going to do things you shouldn't do. Don't waste your time on social media platforms that don't make sense for you or your book. Books tend to do really well on Instagram. I think pretty much any genre, but there's a real fan base of readers on Instagram, but I didn't have a huge Instagram presence. Now, I did end up doing a collaboration with a book reviewer in India where she reviewed my book for free and we did a contest and she's on Instagram and it worked out really well. But just know Instagram's a good one. I've heard Pinterest is another great one too, especially if you have a beautiful cover. I'm not on Pinterest. I mean, I have an account, but I don't use it. So I'm just saying typically Instagram and Pinterest are really good targets for books. Instagram, I think kind of all kinds. Pinterest, maybe more toward novels. Again, know your audience. However, I don't really like to play in those playgrounds. I love LinkedIn. That's why I signed up for LinkedIn Live. I love LinkedIn. And I knew there were people on LinkedIn that were ideal candidates for my book, especially ideal readers, especially when I wanted those endorsements. Now, doctors are very prominent and very active on Twitter. I could have promoted my book a little more on Twitter. I did do some Twitter promotions at the very beginning. But if I were going to go back, I wouldn't do it again because you can't be everywhere all the time. You really need to pick two platforms that will work for your book and put your marketing dollars into them. I regret the Twitter promotions that I did because one, there's no evidence whatsoever that I sold any books from those promotions. Like you couldn't tie the promotion to the book the way you can with NetGalley or Goodreads or even BookBubs. Also, I don't like Twitter. So when I was doing this Twitter promotion, I had to spend more time on Twitter and I just didn't have fun. So again, think about your target audience, pick two social media places and spend the time there and do promotions there, but no more than two. And really go all out, especially, you want your audience to be there with you. And let's see. All right. Okay, here is a big one. It kind of goes back to the postage thing. Do not ship your book unsolicited to people. I made this bucket list of reviewers who had reviewed books similar to mine in the past for various publications, newspapers, magazines. I made a list of sort of dream people: Oprah, Reese Witherspoon. Hello, Reese. I'm sorry you didn't read my book. And I had this sales sheet that my team helped me create. So they did this beautiful sales sheet. I didn't have to do it. I had these beautiful boxes and I shipped my book unsolicited to probably 100 people. With the exception of just a couple, it was a big waste of time and money because, they didn't ask to read my book. And I didn't really understand this. Let me go back. It was a big waste of time and money. One, because they didn't ask for the book, so they didn't necessarily want it. And two, I was shipping UPS ground. So every time I shipped a book, it was $11. So you can do the math. It was extremely expensive for me to do the shipping. What was my point I wanted to go back to here? Sorry, guys. I'm so hoarse. Oh, I didn't understand this, truly understand, because I felt like I had targeted people who read books that were similar to mine. I was very picky about who I shipped to, but I still had this kind of crazy list until I started receiving books. So now that I have a decent LinkedIn following and I'm active on social media, and I have two companies in the cancer space, I receive books unsolicited in the mail, sometimes directly from the author, sometimes directly from the publisher. I didn't ask for these books. And guess what happened? They're just sitting on my shelf. They're just not a top priority for me. One book I'm not that interested in. Another book in particular I think is going to be outstanding, but it's just not at the top of my list. And so think about it from their point of view. They probably get unsolicited pitches and books and everything all the time. Don't do that unsolicited. Be very, very targeted in your approach because shipping gets very expensive. All right. Another tip, another do not that I wish someone had told me about. And again, please let me know if you have questions, put them in the comments. I do have a moderator, but I cannot watch in real time on LinkedIn or Facebook, so it's a little hard. So throw all your comments and questions in the chat. So do not expect your review crew to leave a review. And this is really tough because you went out, you asked people, would you do this? Would you be willing? They said yes. You ship them a book ahead of time. You explain how to leave the review. You tell them how important the review is to go as soon as the book is live to have that review. And yet, half the people I shipped my book to never posted a review. And I was disappointed because it was hard getting those books out and again, paying for the shipping. And I thought, well, if you ask to read my book, surely you're going to read it. And half of the people didn't. Now, one of my closest friends in the world, to his credit, the minute my book went live, he posted his review. And so that was awesome. But it was really frustrating because I knew these people, um, and I don't even know if they finished reading my book and just didn't write the review. I'm not sure, but just know that however many early reviewers you want, recruit twice as many. If I had known only half were going to do the reviews, I would have asked another like 25 people at least, because not everyone's going to get around to it. They may think they're going to love your book. They get into it. It's not really their thing, or it's just low on the priority list. So just be aware that even when people say they're going to do it, they may not do it, even if they're your friends. Hold on just a second here. I'm just going to change something as we move on to the next. Okay, so I have to drink some liquid. Please put your comments, questions in the chat. Big shout out to Wisconsin, California. Where in California? I used to live there. Okay, so do not get offended by reviews. I know many authors who never read their reviews, and I think that is excellent advice, but I didn't take it. I've read probably most of my reviews that I'm aware of. There was only one review that I kind of misunderstood that really bothered me, but for the most part, the people who didn't like my book, including professional reviewers, it was okay. They didn't like my book because I had made very specific choices. Excuse me. Some people didn't like my book because it was too detailed. Well, that was a choice I made. Some people felt like my book was too long. Again, a choice I made. Some people, actually, one person on Amazon returned my book because of the cursing. Now, mind you, I don't curse on every page, but there is this phrase, this recurrent phrase throughout my book that involves a curse word, which I don't want to say now because I don't want LinkedIn to block this. but but I don't feel like my book has a lot of offensive language, but this person did. It's okay. You got to let it roll off your back. Do not respond to reviews, negative or positive. I guess you could thank people, but I don't think that's the standard thing to do. You know, as long as you're selling your book and you're putting it out there, you will continue to get reviews. And just know not everyone's going to love your book, and, that's okay. It's totally okay. If reviews are going to upset you or you feel this need to respond to them, then just don't read the review. Let's see. Oh, yes, yes. Okay. Back to the Library of Congress control number. Yes. So if you want librarians to take your book and to put it in the appropriate section, you have to get the Library of Congress control number. It's a little more involved in that, though, because you do actually have to have the information formatted in a very specific way. It's not like you can just throw the number on there. So again, follow up with me. I only know one person I found who did it, very inexpensive, but it does have to be laid out a very certain way. All right, here we go. And here is the last sort of tip I have. I'll review the do nots really quickly again. Don't waste your time on social media platforms that don't make sense. Do not ship your book unsolicited. And do not get offended by reviews. I mean, don't even read reviews if you think they're going to bother you. So here is the last big tip. Again, I wish someone had told me this. Remember, writing your book is not a marathon. Oh, no, 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 no. That's what the writing is the training part of the marathon. All of the writing you're doing is like training for a marathon. And if you've ever done a marathon, I've done a couple. I'm not a good runner. I'm a good walker. But I've done a lot of marathons, 6 marathons. The training for those marathons took me about 5 months. Think of that when you're writing the book. The marathon begins, like you're going to the starting line. That's when you're doing all those endorsements and recruiting your review crew and scheduling, promos and things. But the day your book goes live, that's when the marathon begins. That's when you're off to the races. It really isn't the writing part because it's when you have to sell it. And some people don't want to do the marathon. They don't want to spend the time or money on marketing their book. And I also heard this advice I thought was great. There are 3 buckets, sort of wish lists that people typically have. They want to sell, millions of copies. They want to make money from their book. May not even have to be millions, but they want to make money from their book. One category. Number 2, they want their book to receive positive critical acclaim. Okay. Positive critical reviews. So not just reviews from readers, but from well-known publications. And 3, they want to be on the New York Times bestseller list. So there are 3 categories there. And usually you can only get 2. It's really hard to get all 3, especially without a mainstream publisher. It's very, very difficult. There are exceptions. Again, David Goggins is probably the most successful independently published book. I believe he made the New York Times seller list. I don't know how many copies he sold, and he got some positive reviews. You really have to decide. And for me, it was, I want positive reviews from the people who count, from the doctors. I want doctors to embrace my book and recommend it to their patients. That's what I wanted, number 1. Number 2, I really want to make money from my books. And I'm doing so, but it's definitely not a primary source of income. But publishing that book and having it has definitely led to all of these other opportunities that I've been given. So, that's another way to think about it, especially nonfiction. And I knew I wasn't going to make the New York Times bestseller list because I didn't have a mainstream publisher. So I just let that go. I mean, it's a nice brag, right? But, it wasn't going to happen. So I let it go. All right. That is all I have. So 10 tips with 4 do nots. And if you like this LinkedIn Live, if you want me to talk more about writing and books, please let me know. I go live every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on LinkedIn. If it's appropriate, I go to specific Facebook pages. So if it's about writing, I do this on my author page. If it's about patient advocacy or healthcare or cancer, I typically go live on LinkedIn on my personal, but then stream to Facebook and YouTube accounts that are connected to those. So please share. You can continue to comment. That's the great thing about LinkedIn Live. And so I can go back and try to follow up later. And before we go, I'm going to put here, ask me anything. And so I'm going to see if there are any questions. Okay, back to the Library of Congress control. It doesn't cost anything to get the number from the library. You don't have to pay for it, if I remember correctly. But the important thing is it has to be formatted correctly in the front matter of your book. So, again, if you think your book is a good candidate for being in a library and you think librarians would embrace it, then, it's something you need to do. Oh, Tamara. Hey. All right. Shout out to Tamara. I love her. Oh, okay. We need to talk soon. Tamara's going to be doing a book really soon. And I'm so glad that you liked the session, Mohamed. I'm so glad that you liked it. So again, ask me anything, even if you're watching this after the live is over, and I'll do my best to respond in the comments and point you in the right direction. But if you want to get your book out there, just remember you have to sell, sell, and sell. Thanks so much. See you next week. Going live 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesdays. Bye-bye.